I am very delighted to actually welcome a longtime friend, Olaf Groth, as the second keynote here at the summit. There he is. Welcome, Olaf. Good to see you as always.
Good to see you too, Thomas.
Let me have the honor to give a quick introduction, and then the stage is yours. All right. So Olaf is a global strategist, and he is the think tank founder. He is an advisor. He is an author and a speaker for tech disruption in the global economy. He is a founding chairman and CEO of advisory think tank called Cambrian Futures and of concept development firm Cambrian Designs, and has literally 30 years of experience as an executive and advisor building strategies and ventures across 35 plus countries with multinationals, startups, VCs, foundations, governments, and academia. Olaf also teaches across the United States, in Europe, of course, in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia as a professor of practice for global foresight. Olaf most recently's book on the cognitive economy, it's called The Great Remobilization Strategies and Designs for Smarter Future, is being released, if I can say it here out loud, on October 17. So mark your calendar. Through MIT Press. Following his already successful AI books called Solomon's Code, Humanity in the World of Thinking Machines and the AI Generation. I read it front to back and I like the book. I can highly recommend it. So with that, Olaf, welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for that very gracious introduction. Thank you to you as well as Wao for inviting me to present today, to be one of your keynoters, and thank you to the audience for listening, as well as my fellow speakers and panel members. Allow me to get right to it and share my screen. I hope that you can all see the screen here now. If somebody could just give me a heads up real quick if you are seeing it, if it's working out for you. Yes, I assume so.
Yes. That
okay.
Works all well.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a true pleasure to talk to you today about what we, of course, have deemed to be a revolution in trust and governance. And that is, of course, Web3 as a counterbalance to the existing Web2 world of the large hyperscaler platforms, and how we have structured and run our internet over the past 20 years. And what's of particular importance here, of course, is the confluence of Web3 with artificial intelligence. Very, very promising use cases that I'm going to hopefully bring to you today that will spur further conversation. And so let's dive right in. This is the world that we know, right? This is the world of the multi-sided, or at least two-sided digital platforms. We all know the names, right? The Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks of this world, the LinkedIns of this world, and of course the big Chinese platforms, Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, and others that are really forming an oligopolistic structure, as it were, in how they instantiate artificial intelligence within their business models. And what you're seeing here is a schematic, right? It's a multi-sided business canvas that we're all familiar with. We all, no matter where we are on these different sides, on these big platforms, we all produce something and we all get something out. We all put something in and we take something out. And at the middle, of course, in the middle, I should say, is the artificial intelligence that sits in large server centers, which we call cloud now. And that makes sure that we are all nicely orchestrated and talking to each other, and making sure that the business model for each side works out, so we stay nicely involved and committed to this platform model. So that's the world we've known. AI then is being used in particular to create that glueware between us, and that, of course, starts with enlisting us, continues with acquiring us, right, having us sign on, but then most importantly, engaging us, and finally monetizing us. You cannot monetize us before you engage us. And, that's a very important step in the sequencing of all of this. This graphic, courtesy of my good friend Jeff Moore from a number of years ago. So that's the role that AI plays in all of this. And what is really important to note, of course, is that this is Web 2. So this is centralized. This is run by big platforms that are fueled by big capital. What we have been seeing then over the past 5-6 years or so is the emergence of this new model. Let me just show you how this platform canvas then evolves. And I need all of this to set you up for the use cases. They're much easier to understand when you've seen this, right? So we are still seeing multi-sided platforms, of course. We may call all of this protocols, but at the end of the day, the user interface should look pretty much the same, which is that we all want to put something into the platform and get something out. We just want this thing to be governed differently, and we need it to be developed differently. And so the revolution here, as it were, with AI at the center, is not so much the application layer and the user interface, but rather the bottom part, which is the operating infrastructure of the services and solution platforms or protocols that we want to be taking advantage of. And so on that governance layer and on that development layer, we're now seeing more participatory orchestration of, who has a say over how these platforms are designed, how do we run them, and of course, how do we monetize and get money back out? So it's a more participatory structure. On both of these layers, we are seeing artificial intelligence come to fruition. And here is what that looks like, right? These are 4 archetypical use cases that we have put together. That is, my team at Cambrian.ai and I have looked over. Can we give you a schematic that gives you a bit of an impression as to what's coming, or what has already been emerging, right? So first and foremost, use case number 1, there is a reorganization of compute power and data resources in Web3 with the help of AI. I'll unpack that for you. Similarly, use case number 2, decentralized ownership, monetization, and governance. That's what I just teed up for us, right? Thirdly, and very importantly, because we've been hearing so much about how there is fraud and money laundering and all kinds of nasty behavior in Web3, and we can discuss whether the percentages of that come close to the fraud that is already happening in our more centralized world. Yes, but that's not the topic of this particular keynote. And that is authentication and trust generation in this new paradigm. Very, very important. We call it a trust revolution, so let's make sure that we generate more trust. And then, of course, lastly, reserve currencies for the agent economy in Web3. All right, let me unpack all of that. On use case number 1, decentralized compute and data resources, most of you are well familiar with the fact that we are, of course, very centralized in how we have been organizing ourselves with this near oligopolistic structure that is run by the large platforms. What that leads to is, of course, a centralization, a concentration of both market power as well as capital formation, right? You can't build a Google without a lot of money. You can't build a Google without a lot of talent. And that talent then builds very expensive compute power and starts to develop very expensive algorithms that are also incidentally very energy consuming. So big is beautiful in this model, only of course, that is not necessarily conducive to innovation on, let's call them fringe use cases, the long tail that, as we all know, sometimes spawns the next big thing because it is disruptive and comes out of left field. So we are now using artificial intelligence in blockchains on the chain to generate compute power and aggregate compute power via edge computing. We've seen, of course, NVIDIA's networked GPU approach spring up. Qualcomm Snapdragon AI chips are ideally suited for the edge computing, very energy efficient as well. And we're seeing all of this now being utilized by new types of Web3 applications like BWS for, creating and training new models, new cloud models like Together, for instance, Filecoin here for decentralized data storage, and one of the most recent newcomers, new kids on the block that just won an award while I was in Tianjin with the World Economic Forum is duality, right? Being able to crawl distributed data sets that are encrypted without decrypting them, without lifting any primary data, and certainly without transporting or relocating that data, which is where so much privacy concern and so much security concern is had. So the decentralization of compute and data resources in AI-powered Web3. Use case number 2, distributed ownership and governance. This is, of course, central to this new paradigm. The large corporate platforms are run by centralized boards. Sometimes we feel that the agent conflict, of course, is alive and well, and there's certainly no democratic instincts there. And, that has been working reasonably well in terms of giving us convenience and low price points, but it also means that it's not particularly participatory. And so as we become prosumers, producer consumers, we have started to feel that the deals that we're being given by these platforms aren't exactly equitable, aren't exactly fair. And so let's have a conversation about this. We don't know yet what constitutes fair, but let's have a negotiation. There needs to be a negotiation, a new negotiation around a more fair value exchange, more transparency, distributed types of market structures. And what better mechanisms for these than decentralized autonomous organizations, the DAOs that are very much in the name of our host here today. And so we're seeing lots and lots of application areas depicted here spring up that, of course, need to use artificial intelligence to coordinate, orchestrate that kind of ownership and governance structure. Use case number 3, then, as we do all of this, we need to pay particular attention to security and trust assurance. We are not deserving of the label of trust assurance if we don't actually follow through on that, right? So we need to acknowledge that, of course, AI models, whether they're Web 2 or Web 3 instantiations, have the ability to create things that we don't like deep fakes, for instance, right? And then the cousin of the deep fake is really synthetic data, right? You've got the negative and you've got the positive here side by side. Synthetic data, of course, can generate a lot of positives for us as we try to privacy protect ourselves. That's very valuable, but it can also be used to emulate you and to create fakes of what you are and who you are. And so we need to get a hold of this and need to make sure that this black box of artificial intelligence is essentially made more transparent. And the way that happens is with new types of user key exchange protocols and methods like zero knowledge proofs, right? Q&A, as it were, that needs to be put in place in order to verify that a transaction really has taken place, that people are in receipt of or in possession of the matter or the material or the currency that was supposed to be changing hands. And so zero knowledge proofs, key exchanges orchestrated by artificial intelligence, including generative AI, watch that space. And then finally, the future use case here projecting out a bit, maybe 5 years or so, who knows, KYC and reserve currencies for AI agents. We believe that we could well be in a B2B context, in an enterprise services context, be looking at an agent economy between corporate entities, whether small or medium or large, for certain types of high volume transactions that are reasonably low risk with bounded transaction amounts and fairly precise orders enshrined in smart contracts. Agents can now start to trade with each other. The way that needs to happen, of course, is through cryptocurrencies, because we don't want to hand cash to a bot that will create a lot of distrust. And we do want that trust buffer between the fiat economy and the crypto economy. I think These days, we're getting pummeled with more news of crypto exchanges not doing so well. And so while all that shakes out, while we're also waiting for regulatory clarity, we need to pay attention to creating these buffers, right? And you can do that with well-bounded smart contracts that these agents can then source compute power for or on generate certain content or like I said, certain goods and services, changing ownership. All of that needs to be bounded and secured. And for that, we believe that AI and smart contracts on the chain are absolutely necessary. So what I have given you are 4 archetypes of use cases. There are many, many more, of course, but those are the 4 that we see categorically. Hopefully a good thought stimulation for all of you to hack away at, prove us wrong, or prove to us that there are more promising ones out there. With that said, thank you, everybody. If you want to contact me, here's my email. You'll find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to contact me, connect with me. Let me know where you met me, as it were, and I'm happy to engage with you at any time. Thank you, everybody, and back over to you, Thomas.
Olaf, here we go. Hey, thank you very much, as always. Very insightful. You are actually a compliment to you. You are the first one who's actually ahead of schedule. I really appreciate that. So taking advantage of that, let's opening up the stage here for some questions from the audience. I see Sonia is calling in or dialing in. So do you have any good questions? Sonia? I cannot hear you.
Oh, so, yeah, one question from the audience, actually a few, but this one is referring to Web3 and blockchain. When do we expect Web3 and blockchain to play a more active role in the tech ecosystem and network market?
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Look, quite clearly, blockchain is sort of being batched in with the concept of crypto, right? And we're seeing, I think a continued blowout when it comes to crypto, right? You all know, of course, about Binance's trouble. And so I think we are still, we're still sort of moving toward the peak of the hype cycle. So if all of you understand, have seen the hype cycle, you know that there is, of course, the slope of inflated expectations. And we all thought this was going to be, everybody was going to be trading in crypto in short order. And so we have overhyped crypto and the blockchain in that confluence of the two. I think what's going to happen now is that entrepreneurs and especially venture capitalists are going to focus on more discrete use cases, some of which I've just shown you, and I'm sure that our audience can generate 20 more that are much less, let me say it, glamorous and sexy, and a lot less sort of get rich quick, as it were, which is what the hype around crypto and blockchain has been all about so far. And they're going to be looking at where does the true value reside? How can I bring a blockchain into a corporation, leverage new types of decentralized modes of governing and running this thing, even though I'm taking advantage of it as a corporate decision maker? There'll be an extension of corporate use cases here of a centralized model into decentralized models. And I think this is where we're going to see the first wave of real discrete, but much more narrowly defined value. And I think that has started, in fact, a year or two ago. And I think that's where the future lies over the next 5 years. So I hold great hope for that much more narrow, much less sexy, but much more valuable parsing into vertical use cases. And I'm happy to give you examples, right? Thomas has told me that we're doing well on time. So let me give you one example, right? So I have been traveling around the world, in fact, twice this summer, and I've been meeting with people who are looking at smart supply chain, smart logistics, smart trade, right, to make it more resilient. and to keep increasing trade rather than decreasing it with all this geopolitics and climate change and other disruption, right? And there are very, very interesting innovators around the world who are now trying to make trade smarter, as it were. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to use smart contracts to understand when a good is leaving a certain port, let's say in India, and expected to hit Dubai to be going on to wherever, Los Angeles, right? And so they're using this technology as a logging mechanism, a real-time logging mechanism to create visibility on expected delivery times. But I think that that is only the smallest and lowest hanging fruit here. What we've been discussing is, can you use Web3, blockchain, and artificial intelligence to incentivize a remote supplier in, let's say, the hinterlands of Vietnam to come onto my global smart trading platform and ready themselves with some guidance from the mothership, as it were, to be switched out for a supplier that's in trouble, or that is suffering from sanctions, or that is being flooded by climate change, or has a freighter caught up in some canal. And so the question then is, how do you incentivize a small supplier in the hinterlands of Vietnam to play ball, as it were? And for that, of course, you need to be able to cut them in, develop new commercial structures, and become part of a larger global platform. That means you have to employ more blockchain and Web3 governance and revenue sharing paradigms. And all of that is really the Wild West right now. We haven't scoped this out, but the actors, the players, the executives that I'm talking to around the world are saying that is, conceptually speaking, where we need to go. Now we need to figure out how to put it in place. And of course, we all know that's where the real work starts. But I would say on a 3 to 7 year horizon, we're going to see more and more models like this. I visited an amazing demonstration facility in Singapore, for instance, run by McKinsey in collaboration with 𝐿9, smart supply chain company using AI, that was starting to look exactly at those types of things with NASA-style control centers to figure out how to move goods and how to incentivize people to generate them, to produce them, to ship them, to take receipt of them, to market them at just the right time. And again, that is a wickedly complex integration problem, but we will get there eventually.
And may I add to that, you are, Olaf, playing right into what we are trying to build and what our mission is. I really love the examples of a true business application based on blockchain that can solve real problems that we have today that cannot be solved without blockchain. And I am also thankful what you just said, that we have to acknowledge, fortunately or not, unfortunately or not, that the current terms of Web3 and blockchain has unfortunately not the best reputation in the overall market because of the Wild West, because of crypto, Binance, FTX, you name it. And this conference, its primary mission is to unlock the potential of Web3 and blockchain for the AI community to then join a DAO and have something decentralized. And I'm coming back to the legal session that we just heard from these experts, that we are building a membership, a DAO that is owned by the members, for the members, to serve customers. So I'm thankful the way you just articulated that. Thank you very much. Maybe next question.
Yes, the next question is around the development of both AI and Web3. So will AI benefit Web3 and influence it, or the other way around, or perhaps both simultaneously?
Yeah, so I think it's both, but I think it starts with AI, right? I think what we're seeing is through generative AI and these very low-cost subscriptions that you will get a lot of users that go on a chain that will be able to use generative AI to develop narrow applications that allow you to converse with other people on the chain in a more automated way. All of that will be, of course, enabled by compute power, decentralized compute power, like the one that I just showed you, right? Whether it's NVIDIA chips or whether it's Qualcomm chips on a handset. You will eventually, for the true potential of the chain to come through, need to leverage more decentralized compute power on the chain. And it's not like Web 2 compute power and large cloud computing is going to go away. That's going to be with us for, eternity, as it were. So this is really an augment, and it's really an ancillary model for certain types of use cases where decentralization is really needed, right? So for instance, in healthcare, right, where you really don't want your fitness device data leaving your wrist, as it were, and you still want to be able to analyze it, diagnose what's going on, and spit out messages to you, but you don't necessarily want to give that to the big hyperscaler platforms making sense of your hormone movements or your heart health or whether or not you're overweight, and God knows where that data is going to end up, right? And so I think very narrow use cases like that will benefit from the confluence of open source generative AI and decentralized edge compute power. And so I think it's yes, I will admit it's a supply side forward type approach, right? Because the gates on those two items, meaning affordable AI and decentralized compute power, are so capital intensive to get there that we needed to wait for it first. But I think as we are seeing more regulation come up, whether it's in Europe or here, on protecting consumers' data, on assigning new types of digital property rights for the data we generate, right? We will also then see much more demand for those types of technologies. So while we have a supply side push, we will then also generate a demand side pull that utilizes what's being supplied. And so I do think that is on the horizon. It does have that critical element of regulators stepping up. I think that would really, really help. And I'm hoping that Europe will be one of the locations that will lead on this, because it is playing into Europe's deficiency, of course, which is that they don't have large hyperscaler platforms and cloud businesses to begin with. And so, and they are very privacy and security conscious. And so I'm hoping that we'll see smart regulation emanating from there, but we'll have to see. Of course, the United States needs to do the same thing. We're now all paying attention to the writers' strikes and the actors' strikes in Hollywood. I think there's a good chance that from those types of precedents and precursors will be a newfound awareness in Congress that we need to regulate digital property rights. And when that happens, we'll see a lot more decentralization that has the right safeguards there with AI and otherwise. I hope that makes sense.
I have another burning question, but before I ask my own question, maybe one more from the audience.
Yes, so another question that just came in, this is regarding some of the issues that are being flagged with Web3, and potentially what this participant is asking, if you see AI playing a role in analyzing blockchain transactions for a particular token or network and uncovering potentially a not fraudulent behavior that real people can then follow up on.
Well, so I guess the question is really around AI forensics, right? So using AI for forensic analysis, and that's really in the cybersecurity realm. But yes, you could see AI being used for maybe text-based verification of keys or of Q&A information, like in zero-knowledge proof, for instance, analyzing that or triggering those types of verification exercises. So I could certainly see that. I also, talking to my friends in cybersecurity, do see, of course, AI being used in pattern recognition, in fraudulent banking operations, and there is no reason that AI couldn't be used on the chain in a similar way, right, in cost-effective ways, analyzing the transaction patterns of somebody that is trying to transact with you. And there could be a decentralized distributed AI for that, seeing patterns of potentially fraudulent behavior, maybe movements of transactions on the chain. So there is that. There is also using AI for anomaly detection. So can you detect anomalies in a user's behavior that stand out, right? So instead of saying patterns, seeing singular points of anomalies that pop out that don't make any sense. So you could see AI being used for that. And again, I don't see any reason for why that should work in a centralized and not in a decentralized way, assuming you can calibrate the applications to work with edge computing.
All right. I like to add another question, unless you have a really cool question, Sonia. Otherwise, I would like to throw in mine.
I think we're okay for now.
Okay, thank you. Now, anybody here who has or is following Olaf on LinkedIn or social media will recognize almost every summer he flies around the world twice, I would say. And based on that knowledge that you are gaining literally from a global perspective, I really like to hear your opinion about the crypto world and the blockchain Web3 with problem-solving enterprise applications and the dynamic of the two on a global basis in various regions versus what is or is not happening in the United States.
Yeah. So it's probably no surprise to anybody in the audience, and certainly not for you, Thomas, or your partners, that a lot of the leading hubs on crypto trading around the world are hubs that have either a pattern of weak institutional frameworks. I'm talking about countries and markets in Africa. Certainly even before the Russian war in Ukraine, we knew that Russia and Ukraine were in fact crypto trading hubs. And then, yes, also Southeast Asia being hubs. It may well be that Silicon Valley is a hub for innovation, but when we talk about transaction volumes, then we've certainly seen those non-traditional, non-digital frontier regions, I think, pull away from us and lead. But as we are now seeing regulators crack down, and rightly so, and as we are seeing the deflation of some of that, like I say, get rich quick kind of paradigm, not to diminish that there are some legitimate needs, obviously, for bypassing dysfunctional institutional networks in any of these markets that I have mentioned. Okay, we will see the deflation of some of those leading hubs around the world. However, I think at the same time, there is something else that is coming up now that will give a boost to a lot of countries around the world, and first and foremost, what we call Alt-Asia, or that's what people call alternative Asia, right? Meaning alternative to China, and that is yes, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, and then of course prominently India as well, and maybe less so, but connected as well, Japan and South Korea. And so and by the way, collectively, those economies in terms of GDP as well as population are collectively bigger than China. And let's not forget that China is shrinking from 1.4 billion to 800 million people by the end of the century. Now, that's a long time for most of us. We will likely not be alive unless you're a billionaire that wants to freeze yourself. And so because of that potential, we're now seeing the Biden administration and its allies invest much more heavily in those places, in Alt-Asia, Of course, India was well known, right? We're now bringing a lot of semiconductor know-how and fabs to India. But then next is Thailand, Vietnam. Lots of money flowing in there now. Biden just visited Vietnam. The new comprehensive strategic partnership between the United States and Vietnam will be very important for development of new cutting-edge competencies, and actually AI and semiconductors are right there at the top of the agenda for Vietnam. We're now looking at semiconductor design centers being put in place in Vietnam. And Vietnam has always had small pockets of AI competencies there. They were small, but they were there. And so now that's all being given a boost. We'll have to see how all this plays out. Thailand is, of course, a little bit behind Vietnam in terms of attention and money flows to it, but it is struggling and striving to catch up and say, hey, I'm here too. And I think there are some very attractive aspects about Thailand when it comes to digital. And then, of course, the other markets that I mentioned. So there'll be a string, as it were, of good pearls to be had. And so I'm confident that that will pick up on some of the crypto, the blockchain, the Web3 innovation that is happening, the AI innovation that is happening. And in fact, nobody has really ever mapped that. And it's important to map it, because if it's getting a boost now, then it's going to be a global player. It's going to be a global center of innovation for us on AI, Web3, and compute power. And we need to understand it better. And in fact, I'm engaging with my team with a potential client in Southeast Asia to do exactly that kind of mapping and to show the world just what tremendous innovation power there is in that region. So stay tuned on that.
Excellent. Olaf, before I close this session, I can tell the audience this was not scripted, because as I'm thanking Olaf, I would like to invite Chris on stage to be the moderator for the VC section, because he flew all the way over from Vietnam, and he is heavily invested and is an investor and an expert in Web3. And we have a panel coming right now where the majority of the investors are actually heavily either from Asia or actively in Asia. So this wasn't scripted. Olaf, as always, you are right on the money, and I thank you very much as always. See you next time.
Thanks to you, and see you.